As early as the year 1565, a massive migration to this country began. Starting with Western Europe, then the British Isles, people were fleeing from war, famine, religious conflict, poverty, and disease. And though it wasn't a country just yet, America was the promised land that offered wages, jobs, space to build, freedom of religion, and new possibilities. Many realized that although much of that was true, it was romanticized, and their journey was exhausting, arduous, and unwelcoming, and full of loss and challenges. This cultural melting pot of different traditions was unique, and the fusion of their respective lineages began during migration, finding comfort in the journey. Some willingly and some unwillingly entered the ports up and down the East Coast or through Texas and New Orleans, settling throughout the South, the Southeast, the Northeast, the Appalachian Mountains, and the Ozarks. And along with language, they brought styles of dance, songs, and instruments from their homelands, such as fiddles, accordions, fifes, and flutes, and early versions of the guitar. Enslaved African Americans brought drums, rattles, and the gourd banjo, which was first played by white musicians in the 1830s, primarily in blackface minstrel shows. Now, between 1600 and 1900, in cities in the mountains of Appalachia, white settlers were not only met with a confluence of other white ancestry, but they also became heavily influenced by the local indigenous and American Indians and the African Americans that they enslaved, which had a profound impact on styles of dance, instrumentation, melodies, and the rhythms that became essential components of American popular music. And there were many communities throughout the South and throughout Appalachia where white people and black people could live in relative harmony. And in fact, nearly every famous white bluegrass and country musician from 1900 up through the 1960s will cite a black musician as their mentor or their teacher. And all those cultures coming together resulted in genres that came to be known as old time, mountain, cowboy, and folk, which gave way to early country, hillbilly, western, bluegrass, and eventually contemporary folk music. There was also gospel and spiritual music that was passed through generations of migration, and turn-of-the-century secular music, such as ragtime, variations of pre-war blues, that's before 1918, such as Delta, Hill Country, and Piedmont blues, which would all help form the popular vaudeville blues of the 1920s, as well as swing, variations of jazz, Chicago blues, rhythm and blues, rock and roll, soul, pop, and so on. And one of the aspects that I admire most about this history is the oral tradition, or oral transmission of songs. It's wild to me that over the course of hundreds of years, traveling thousands of miles by boat, horse, word of mouth, that some melodies, lyrics, phrases, and compositions can survive this long. And the simple act of people playing and sharing songs for one another, retaining it and repeating that process over generations happened everywhere that people gathered, inside churches, sacred places, under trees, in living rooms, schools, front porches, and on the street corners. So in spirit of our theme tonight, which is Carry On, the story of American roots music says it over and over and over again. And this first song that I'm going to play for you tonight is a perfect example of this migration story. It's part Scottish ballad ancestry and also uses an African-American style of banjo playing called thumping, which is a precursor to clawhammer style. Though what I do on the banjo is somewhere between clawhammer and North Carolina's frailing style. This song also features floating lyrics, which are phrases or sections of lyrics that can be found in several other folk songs. When you couldn't remember the words to a song back in the day, you could always just lean on some lyrics that were used often. And also, this song has many different titles, depending on where you come from. It's most commonly known as Red Rocking Chair, but if you lived near Asheville, you might call it Red Apple Juice. Other titles include I Ain't Got No Honey Baby Now, Sugar Baby, and what I like to call Honey Baby. Well, I ain't got no use got no use for your red rocking chair. Ain't got no honey, baby, now. Well, I ain't got no honey, baby, now. When I who rocked the cradle, who rocked the cradle, who will sing this song? Who rocked that cradle when I'm gone? Well, now who rocked that cradle when I'm gone? Yeah, now I'll rock that cradle. Yeah, now I'll rock that cradle, and I will sing this song. I will sing them, baby, till you're gone. I will rock that cradle when you're gone. And I laid her in the shade, laid her in the shade, gave her a diamond made. What more could a poor boy do? Yeah, what more could a poor boy do? And I done all I can do, done all I can do, said all I can say. Sing it to your mama next payday. I'll sing it to your mama next payday. And I ain't got no use for your red rocking chair. Ain't got no honey, baby, now. Well, I ain't got no honey, baby, now. Thank you. Well, my journey did not start with traditional music. And in fact, it kind of started at the opposite end of the spectrum. In 2001, I was a 16-year-old junior in high school, and I was watching in amazement as my friends Eric and Andy were trading the guitar and playing for this group of enthralled girls at a recess class. And seeing that music equaled girls, I was eager to learn, and within a day, I became so obsessed with learning the guitar intro to Dave Matthews' song Crash that I convinced my parents to buy a starter guitar pack for $100 at our local music store. Well, I tortured everybody around me for the next year with the sounds that were coming out of the guitar and out of my voice. Once I got past that dying cat phase of singing, I did what everybody else does early on. I started doing open mic nights, where I would play guitar too loud and I would whisper into the microphone for an audience that, looking back, probably had a little bit of pity and their gentle applause. My senior year, I was given a lacrosse scholarship to attend the Ohio State University. And in the dorm, as a freshman, I would play songs shirtless, and then I would purposely leave my door open so that the girls on the other side of the hall could hear me. It's cringeworthy now. In the spring of my first year on the team, I tore my ACL in the left knee during practice. And I spent the next 5 to 6 months in rehab after surgery. And I was upset, but I felt like I could get through it and I would be back up to speed soon. But still, I needed to occupy time, and so my guitar was always with me. I got some cheap recording software for my computer so I could hear what I sounded like. And then for hours each day, I'd work on a phrase or a song until it sounded suitable. And when I got back on my feet, literally, I got my first gig at a bar on campus. And then exactly 1 year to the day after my first surgery, I tore my left knee again during the last minute of a game. I was devastated, and I started leaning heavily on Percocet and Vicodin, drinking and smoking cannabis to ease my building depression. It was one of those moments of complete rock bottom in my life. But then one day I started writing about how I felt, and I realized that what I had to say was actually pretty liberating. And I found some old poems that I wrote in middle school, and I turned them into songs, and songwriting soon became my most effective outlet, though drinking and pills were still there. And while I was in rehab, I started playing a few gigs a month. And one night, I was performing at a campus bar up in a balcony that overlooked kind of a shotgun-style lower level. And early into the night, this large group of bikers and full black leather, tattoos, mean-looking dudes came in, and they started the typical ask for me to play Freebird, which I had no idea how to play, and I had no desire to learn. And I didn't respond for a while, but they kept at it. And then I went over the edge. And I said, "Hey, I don't play that effing song." I didn't say effing, I said the actual word. And instead, I proceeded to play what I was really into at the time, which was John Mayer's "Your Body is a Wonderland." It tore me to pieces. Every emasculating thing I could think of and more was said to me. It was only one of a handful of times in my life where I felt completely defeated and totally helpless. I took a year off from performing, questioning whether or not I could take that level of abuse again, and whether I could walk on stage again, where everything seemed to be even more vulnerable than it was before. Not long after that, I tore the same ACL for the third and final time in my left knee while I was running from the police on New Year's Eve, doing really dumb college kid stuff. And looking back, I think my spirit was so broken that I was free in some way, or maybe just completely untethered, unhinged. So I stopped going to rehab. I got in a fight that put me in the hospital with 8 staples in my head. I was released from the team. I lost my scholarship. I stopped going to class, and I was kicked out of college. Through all of that, though, music was there for me. So I decided to go for it. I picked a name, Weatherman, spelled W-H-E-T-H-E-R-M-A-N, from the Phantom Toll Booth. And I started taking recording more seriously in 2006. And I got everything together to make my first record, titled Bull. And here's a song called Moon from that record. Also a little bit cringeworthy now for me. I got a little bit of traction locally in Columbus after that record, and I started doing the local bar gig circuit in addition to working at a restaurant, and I was also coaching lacrosse. Then I took a massive leap of faith, and I figured, I'm gonna move to Chicago. It was the closest big city, and I felt like if something was gonna happen, it would happen there, and that I could, quote, make it there. What actually happened was I got hired and fired from a waiter job. I coached lacrosse at a high school. Then I was paid what I felt like was less than minimum wage, working at Seattle's best coffee shop at Borders Bookstore on Michigan Avenue. When my girlfriend at the time cheated on me in Mexico, in the same week a customer just went off on me because I made their Americano wrong, I decided that Chicago was out. And it had chewed me up and spat me out with my tail between my legs. My best friend from high school had a job coaching lacrosse for me far away in Jacksonville Beach, Florida. So I moved into his spare bedroom in 2009. This is the soundtrack to my life, if you can't tell so far. And in Florida, everything changed. Well, most things changed. I was still waiting tables and still coaching, but the lifestyle there was so relaxed. I started surfing, smoking a lot of cannabis, getting to know myself on a deeper level through different recreational experiences and friendships, and dedicating myself to writing songs. I played the local bar gig circuit, and I slowly branched out to smaller and smaller tours that got a little bit wider and a little bit wider. And I'd save and quit the restaurant that I was working at so I could tour. Then I would come back and beg them to rehire me, and then rinse and repeat that cycle. I started studying all the different avenues of a DIY musician's life: how to book tours, graphic design for websites, merchandise, albums, flyers, promoting, social media, which mainly at the time was just MySpace and Facebook, and submitting for songs for placement for film and television, and envisioning all the pipe dreams that a young and naive artist has. But things really clicked for me in Florida. I recorded a few more albums. Weatherman became a full band for bigger occasions, and 2 pivotal experiences happened. First, in 2010, I was invited to perform my first big music festival at a truly magical place called the Spirit of Swanee Music Park, which is in Live Oak, Florida. It's situated on ancient Indian grounds, and there are amphitheaters and stages tucked in the woods. There's Spanish moss dangling from these ancient live oak trees. And there's a reverence there that I can't really fully describe. And that festival was the first time that I was exposed in person to bluegrass, old time, and other forms of string music. And the second experience that I had was the first time I ever saw the Coen brothers film, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And the soundtrack of that movie would sort of simmer in the background of my life over the next decade and slowly expose me to more and more music from the past. And eventually I left the restaurant industry for good. I started figuring out how to live on the very little that I was making. I created a fake booking agent named Liam Brooks to be taken more seriously, which worked for about 5 years, by the way. And I started living in my Saturn Ion and on the couches of friends and family that would put me up. I worked my way up to 120 shows a year and graduated to a Honda Element, which I lived in for the better part of 2 years. But the brunt of my life living on the road was spent from 2014 to 2018 in a 23-foot Freightliner Sprinter van that my girlfriend, now wife, and I built out to be a camper van. And we affectionately named it Black Betty. We like to include that this was before the hashtag van life craze, and made sure to share the reality of van life to everybody that we talked to about it, because although we woke up many times to these sort of serene and astonishing views, more often than not, we were parked in a neighborhood or behind the venue, highway pull-offs, BLM land, or if absolutely necessary, a Walmart parking lot or a truck stop. It was a time that I both deeply appreciate and have no desire to turn back to.